Welcome everybody to part two of our James Hardie Building Products webinar. Tonight's presenter is Peter Creel, Technical Sales Manager. This is part two of our series of the James Hardie Building Products. And during the webinar, I'm going to take questions, which you can type in at the bottom right of your screen. And I will also have a call to action, which means I will type a word in that I want you to respond with the same word so that we know that you're watching the webinar. At this point, I'll hand it over to Peter, and thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. So I'm Peter Creel. I am the technical sales manager for James Hardie Building Products. I cover New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut for James Hardie. And this is going to be my 10th year here. So I know you guys went through part one with one of my counterparts, and he went over the best practices. So I'm going to get into just a couple little more detailed areas, and one of them being James Hardie trim. And a lot of you may not even be aware that James Hardie makes trim, because I think in the Northeast we're a very heavy PVC market. So you probably see a lot of PVC paired with James Hardie trim. But James Hardie does make a trim product, and we have made a very big push to sell trim this year. So I figured, we would talk a little bit about the requirements, which are definitely a little different than PVC and maybe what you're used to seeing out there. So there was a couple of changes that we made to our trim, where vertical trim, coming down to grade or to a hard surface, we used to require a 2-inch clearance there, which you can imagine is a bit absurd and a little bit too much. So we've changed that requirement to a 1/4-inch clearance. So James Hardie trim vertically can go down to a 1/4-inch. Horizontally, James Hardie trim usually needs to stick with a 2-inch clearance, but there's a lot of situations where you have porches and cover where we've determined we don't need to maintain that 2-inch clearance. You can go down to a 1/4-inch. Horizontal boards that are not undercover, right? There's no change. And roof to wall intersections, no change. We'll get a little bit deeper into that. As far as fascia goes, we used to require there to be like a sub fascia, behind our trim. We no longer require that. So you can use James Hardie trim without any sub fascia. So if you do run into that, that's just something to keep in mind. So here's some examples. For instance, on a garage door surround, right? It's very hard for James Hardie to sell trim when you needed to maintain a 2-inch clearance at that garage door surround. Pretty unsightly, and I don't think anybody would approve of that. So that is one of the changes. We're now able to sell, in these certain areas where we weren't before. So a garage door, or a corner post, for instance. We used to have to maintain that 2-inch clearance where you maintain it for the siding, which is right next to the trim, right? But we also had to maintain that with our trim as well. So, just imagine everything being up 2 inches off the ground. It didn't look good. So again, vertically, that changed here to a 1/4-inch.
Hey, Peter, can you increase the screen?
Increase it?
Well, so make it full. like you did the last time?
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay. So this is another area where, again, we used to require that 2-inch clearance, but in a covered area like so, clearly there's not going to be too much weather getting at this area, so we've changed that requirement. Same with columns and porch beams. We used to require that there as well. Now it's a 1/4 inch. Clearly we're able to sell more trim by not having some of these requirements.
Pete, do you is caulking wrong? If you caulk that 1/4 inch, or you'll leave it open?
No, you leave it open. Yep. We want to maintain that space between the fiber cement product and the ground. So, any kind of caulk, I guess it's the same type of thing applies where you would leave a 1/4 inch clearance above a drip edge, above a window. You wouldn't caulk that. Same applies to this situation here. And so undercover, as defined by James Hardie, is what you see here. Not more than 10 feet below roof overhang, not less than 4 inches horizontally from the edge. So that's just kind of how James Hardie defines it. So here are some applications where you can't use our trim. You cannot use our trim to make up that 2-inch space at the roof to wall intersection. So as you learned the last time, we require a 2-inch clearance here. And unfortunately, if you're using James Hardie materials on the entire house, including trim, you cannot use a piece of our trim in that area. It's fiber cement, just like the siding. And like if you look over here at the skirt board, we need to maintain a 6-inch clearance from soft grade. So, the trim is the same type of product. So we need to still maintain that 6 inches. So you can't use our trim in that application either. So James Hardie is working on changing some of these requirements, but right now, if you see James Hardie trim in some of these applications, it's technically not allowed, and it wouldn't be covered under warranty.
Can you explain to some of the newer members that are on tonight the reason for that? Why you need that 2-inch clearance with James Hardie products. I mean, I know there's a clearance with wood and some products out there. Why 2 inches?
Yeah, sure. I'll explain it, and then I'll show you some photos that we have later on here. So in that roof to wall intersection area, like clearly you guys have seen, many older homes where, rot starts to form there. And, every time it rains, obviously water goes down into that area, flows into the gutter, and so forth. So I think if James Hardie could ask for 6 inches there, they probably would. But 2 inches is what we ask for, and that is basically, running water, rain, and snow melt, things like that. We just want to keep the siding 2 inches off of the shingles, and it's really all for warranty purposes, and for weather, really. That's the main thing. And this is just kind of showing you what I talked about before, where you can use Hardie trim directly without any kind of sub fascia. So moving into another area here, and I think this is important because touch up and caulk on a James Hardie job seem to be a couple of areas where people run into a lot of problems. And I get a lot of calls, from home inspectors, asking questions about the touch-up paint and, why it looks different here and why it looks different there. So I figured we would just go over, some of the touch-up. So as you can see here, there's a couple different things that are included in the kit, right? There's an edge coater, which looks like this bingo dauber. And that is exactly what that's for. It's for coating the edge, right? You cut a board on a chop saw, you take the edge coater, you coat the edge real quick, and it's sealed, and you're done. Unfortunately, what happens a lot is people will just use that edge coater in their pocket, and they'll use it for a multitude of different things. If they need to use a finishing nail somewhere, they'll use the edge coater to touch it up. If they see a scratch, perhaps in a board, I think it's done with good intentions, but they'll take the edge coater and, they'll wipe it across the scratch. And so, what ends up happening is the paint is a perfect color match, right? But the sheen is always going to be different. One is baked, applied in a factory setting. The other is touch-up paint. So as soon as it dries and the sun hits it from the right angle, you're going to see it every time. So if you're using that edge coater to fill in a finishing nail hole, you're going to have a quarter size circle that is going to appear in the sun at the right light. And there are some pictures of that coming up too. So I'll show you examples. I would have to imagine some of you have seen this on job sites before. So just another example of how to use the edge coater. And this applies for all products, right? Shingle, lap siding, panels, anything that's fiber cement that you cut, technically you should be sealing the edge. And then again, there's a couple different variations of this nail head touch-up kit. But as you can see, clearly, the applicator is a lot smaller and designed to really only touch up that nail head and not to get any paint on the face of what is already a pre-finished product.
So Pete, a lot of times, just because I don't know if the installers are being lazy and they cut the boards along the roof line. If they don't edge coat, isn't that going to start, over time, start to delaminate the product, or in anywhere they cut it? If they don't,
Yeah, absolutely.
can you know if it was applied or not based on how you're seeing the product as it starts to separate a little bit? Can you tell?
Well, you should be able to tell right away. Now, I don't know if you guys are getting up on a roof and laying down and looking underneath in that little 1/4-inch space, but if you wanted to, you certainly could look above that drip edge in that 1/4-inch space, and it would be pretty clear whether it was touched up or not. You'd be able to see the raw edge, or at least even feel it. But yeah, same applies for above windows. If you look up at a window above the drip edge where they've notched the piece and they're maintaining that 1/4-inch clearance, you can see plain as day whether it's touched up or not. And that's definitely a warranty requirement. So there's a couple tips and tricks, to this. A lot of times, guys aren't doing this clearly, and that's why you see a lot of touch-up paint issues. But every James Hardie product comes with a clear plastic laminate over it, every single piece. So when you're hanging trim, a lot of guys will hang the trim and they'll finish nail through the plastic and then use the plastic basically as like a painter's tape sort of thing. A little difficult to do that. Sometimes the plastic moves around a lot. But currently we're in the process of working on an actual true nail hole filler that will not be touch-up paint. It'll be an actual filler that's matched to the color of the trim, which is in this picture Arctic white. But James Hardie does make a multitude of different color trims. So hopefully we're gonna be able to avoid some of these problems in the future with, because I think what happens is a lot of times, people think that the touch-up paint is a filler, and it's really not a filler. It's just a paint. So if you overdrive the nail into a piece of trim, the touch-up kit's really not going to help you at all. So like I said, research and development is currently working on something for that, and hopefully it'll be out shortly. But that should eliminate a lot of these issues. So there's an example of a gable where it looks to me like at some point, right, maybe the wall wasn't so straight or there were some issues. So they ended up pinning back what looks to be pretty much every shingle. And then they use that edge coater to touch up those tiny little finish nails. And this is the result of that. This is pretty common, not to this degree, but I think that's a pretty good example of how visible it can be when you overuse the touch-up or use the improper applicator.
So they didn't have to face nail it. Do you think it's just for whatever reason they said, "Oh, let me shoot in some more nails on that"?
Well, yeah, I think probably what happened here is on our shingle, it comes in a panelized form, so it's 48 inches wide and it's roughly 16 inches high, and the keyways are predetermined in that 48-inch space. Well, the panel itself, like I said, is roughly 16 inches wide, but the nailing line on that panel is not anywhere near the top of the panel, right? It's actually a pretty clear and concise dotted line where the nail goes. A lot of times people will miss that and they'll nail the panel like high, and what'll happen is once they get finished, those shingles, they won't be sitting flat on the wall, and so they'll end up having to pin them back or nail them back, which clearly happened here. And they misused the touch-up paint with the wrong applicator, and this is the result, unfortunately. And I get asked this a lot by the inspectors, who call me, well, what can we do? Or what can the homeowner do? I mean, there's nothing you can do in this situation except replace all the material or repaint, or paint over this entire gable section. Which is why it makes touch up and caulk really very important parts of the job. Because if you screw it up, you're going to end up in a situation like this, and there's really no way to fix it.
So you could just caulk and repaint, right? Caulk those up and paint them, or just leave it and paint it.
You could just paint right over that right now, the way it is, and everything would blend in and be perfect. The problem is if it was just one of those rows that had all this misused touch up on it, and you really can't just paint the row, because again, the sheen, it's probably not going to match perfectly, so you end up having to paint the whole thing. And in a lot of cases where, say, somebody may have applied caulk in the butt joints of lap siding, if they did it in one place, they did it around the rest of the house. And again, that's a situation where there's just really no way to fix that, and you'd end up having to paint everything. Which we do run into quite frequently.
Pete, until you get your product out, what could you use to fill those nails hole in temporary? Is caulk okay? Just the nail holes. If there was all holes and then you were going to repaint the whole thing, what product would you suggest to use?
Yeah, if you were planning on painting the whole thing, you could absolutely use caulk. For instance, if this was primed siding by James Hardie, not pre-finished, they make all these corrections, fill everything in with caulk, and then the painter comes and sprays everything, and you've got a perfect job. Now we don't sell primed. It's available in this market, but this is a 98% pre-finished market, where the South would be more like, an 80% primed market. Painting is very cheap there. It's very expensive here. So unfortunately we have to deal with pre-finished products. And, this is the result of some of that. And that would be, wow, that's an interesting photo. That would be an example of, a nail, a pin back that they tried to do on a piece of lap siding there. And, clearly you can see how they used the edge coater. The entire circle of that edge coater is right around there. And, it really sticks out when the light hits it. So this happens quite frequently. So, it's definitely something that, I guess, at the end of the day, is it installed wrong? No, I guess it's not installed wrong, but aesthetically, clearly it's horrible. So, that's kind of where I fall in the middle a lot with inspectors that call me. It's like, well, is this an installation error? I mean, technically, the product is installed properly. You are allowed to pin back, boards or, butt joints or shingles, but you have to touch it up properly. So it kind of falls in the middle of that. This is an aesthetic thing, or this is an installation error. And, unfortunately, that does happen a lot too.
So you're saying if they high nail and they don't nail in the lines, or if they do that, does that hurt the warranty? Like, it's like roofing shingles. If
Yeah.
Will that void the warranty? If like a customer, oh, what's going on with this siding, and you come out, do you make that determination?
Yes. I mean, not me personally. We do have a warranty department. So they handle those types of claims. But yes, a lot of times, if lap siding is high nailed, and I don't know if you guys have all seen, an actual piece of Hardie or whatever, just, a sample, but it actually is printed on the board. It says nail line. And you'd be surprised at how many people miss that. And they nail as high as they can on the board. Well, as soon as you get a strong wind, all that siding is going to start chattering on the house. And, you go over to the siding, if you can get your pinky under there and, move that siding pretty decently, you can, determine that it was probably high nailed. And that happens, occasionally as well. So we were talking about caulk. I just wanted to, show you guys, this is, OSI Quad Max is, a partner of James Hardie's. Obviously we only make fiber cement. We don't make caulk. So OSI is one of our partners that makes, color match caulk for all the different James Hardie colors, as well as tight bond. But just kind of showing you, this is what we recommend. This would be in our literature. And as I was saying before, this is one of the, the worst things that can happen on a lap siding job. And, this little picture here is pulled right out of our installation book, which, you know, I I don't know how many people read it, but it clearly states not to caulk the butt joints. Um, if you caulk the butt joints, you know, in about, I would say 3 months, 3 to 6 months, that caulk in that butt joint turns completely white, and you can see it from a mile away. And like I said, there's really no way to fix it. You can't dig the caulk out of there. You can't just paint that area. It becomes I have to paint the whole, house sort of thing. And the reason that that happens is, they're not laying like a perfect bead in that imperfect butt joint. They're laying a bead in there and they're taking their thumb or their finger, right? And they're tooling it in. As soon as you do that with that caulk, it removes like all the UV protectant that's in the caulk. And, it takes definitely less than 6 months to turn white. And you can imagine if it's a blue siding or dark colored siding, it's very clear. So that is also something to watch out for, on a new home, being inspected, something like that. You see caulk in the joints, it might look perfect at that point, but it's definitely going to be a problem in the future.
That goes for prime stuff. No caulk on the pre-primed. That's before painted.
No caulk on pre-finished product, correct. If you're using primed, um, you know, I mean, this is really information that's more geared towards the South, but if you're using primed, the butt joint application is a little different. You leave a bit of a space in the butt joints there to accept the caulk, and those butt joints get caulked, and then clearly everything then gets sprayed afterwards. So it is acceptable to do that when you're using primed Hardie products only, not pre-finished. So I just wanted to show you kind of an example of like high nailing and some nailing issues. Um, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the you can clearly see here it says Hardie plank, and then it says nail line over here, and there's these dots or dashes that run along the board, and that's where the nail gets placed. It doesn't get placed between the top of the board and this line somewhere. It gets placed on the line. So you can see a siding nail right in there, right on the line. Up here, when nails get placed up, a quarter inch or so above that line, you're going to have some pull away down here. And if you're in a windy area, or if you get some high wind, the siding will move, and it will chatter and make noise. So that nail line clearly is there for a reason. It's determined that that spot is the pinch point, and when nailed on that nail line, you could barely get your finger up, to pull away the Hardie from the side of the house. If it's high nailed, you can move it around a good amount. So up here on the top, a lot of times they'll overdrive the nail, and of course, if it goes through like that, I mean, clearly they put another nail in here, but we do see that sometimes as well. Just a really a pressure problem or something on the gun, but
So gun nail versus hand nailing, as long as it doesn't overdrive or underdrive, you're okay with that.
Say that again.
You're okay with using a gun versus hand nailing. I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I don't know if anyone's hand nailing Hardie siding. You could, but yeah, most guys are using siding nailers, and it is acceptable to use roofing nails or siding nails with James Hardie. The roofing nail, while it does provide a better hold, the head of the nail is, twice the diameter. And sometimes what ends up happening is when you try to place the nail right on that nail line, and then you go to lap over the next board, sometimes you can see a tiny little like half moon of like a shiner that sticks out, right? Because the nail is the head of the nail is pretty large. So most people are using ring shank siding nails. But yes, always a gun.
And it
Always.
doesn't matter if you hit the wall stud. You can go in between. Ring shank is the best way to go, just to keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. Ring shank, stainless steel ring shank siding nails would be, the absolute best. But a galvanized siding nail is good. Now, if it, technically, if you're not going to hit studs, you should be placing a nail every 8 inches on center, as opposed to 16 on center, just for some extra hold. Just so keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Oh, we got some animations here. So not sure if you guys are aware of this, but we do. This is something that gets missed, which is why I bring it up. We do require a starter strip on the first course. Obviously, with lap siding, there's an angle that's created, and there's nothing for that first piece to lap over. So a lot of times, you can show up to a job and you'll see that first course all the way around the house sitting flat on the wall, as opposed to the rest of it, right? So it's required to use a starter strip, which is basically just a ripped piece of Hardie, or something that's relatively close to 5/16 thick, to place behind that first board, just to give it that kick out. Again, would it be a failed warranty if they didn't use a starter strip? No, because technically it doesn't have anything to do with the performance of the board, but aesthetically it looks silly. So another one of those kind of happy mediums between best practices and aesthetics, where it's kind of hard sometimes to say, well, it's installed improperly, and it's going to fail, but it may not just look very good. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see here. Sorry, guys, a lot of animation. I wanted to show some examples of some good clearances here. So that's a 2-inch roof line clearance, clearly all the way around. In this case, they used black, kind of looks like a shadow. I always liked this picture. I thought that the black creating that kind of shadow from the ground looks really good. But there's a few different ways you can achieve that clearance.
Can you get colored coil?
Yep, there you go.
Okay, good. You answered. Sorry, so you got ahead of you.
No, that's all right. I can't see the slides that are coming up either, so excuse me if I take a second. Yes, so here you have color match trim coil, bent in.
You sell that? You guys sell color match, or
We do not. So again, a lot of these products are third party, because we only make fiber cement. But all the manufacturers, most of the manufacturers of trim coil, all have matching coil to all the standard James Hardie colors, or the statement collection, which consists of like 18 colors. That would be locally available within a day on the ground in Connecticut, New Jersey, New York. So I think this is probably the choice of most installers on the roof line, to use or to bend a piece of color match coil there. You can also use trim there, but again, it can't be Hardie trim. So if they're, let's see here, I thought it was the next picture. So for instance, if they're residing this whole house and they're using PVC trim on all the rest of the windows and everything, a lot of times you'll see, that'll be a piece of PVC trim, 2-inch running up there with a drip edge and a 1/4-inch clearance maintained, to match the rest of the trim around the house.
Pete, should there be kick out by the gutter for your product?
Yes.
And how about above that little hip roof over here too? Should there be is there anything out over there, or just by the gutter pretty much? This side is okay over by where the bay window.
Yeah. This is the only thing we require here, is that 2-inch clearance. And again, this is on a little roof like this, or like an eyebrow roof or something. We are looking into possibly making some changes to those requirements. I don't think 2 inches is really necessary there. So they may change that and bring it down to 1 inch or something. But the roof to wall intersection will always stay 2 inches. This was just a couple examples of, the horizontal flashing. I'm sure you guys see this every day, but anything that runs horizontally needs a drip edge, needs to maintain that 1/4-inch clearance, right, with no caulk. Above this window here is what I was saying before. This notch cut, if it wasn't touched up, you would be able to see that pretty easily if you were looking in there. So here's another big one that I get a lot. As you guys have probably noticed, board and batten in white with black windows has been like the trend over the last 3 years. There's a ton of it. And like all James Hardie products, when you're stacking 2 pieces of fiber cement on top of each other, it requires a horizontal flashing there. So no exception to the panels. So clearly this, they had to stack panels here, and you're supposed to run a horizontal joint here, and there's a drip edge. It's a bit much. It's a bit unsightly, I think, when homeowners are going for the board and batten look. They want that, that straight up and down without a break in between. But if you're using James Hardie products, we require that horizontal flashing there. And I just wanted to show you guys a picture of it. Just something to keep an eye out for, because I think you'll probably find a lot of board and batten homes where this may not be done properly. So here's pictures I took a little while back of a bad roof line. So talking about that 2-inch clearance, this is why we require it. There were a lot of issues on this particular house. So clearly whoever was installing it, didn't really know what they were doing. I don't believe like any of these cuts were touched up. And so, this is the effect of that.
How old do you think that this is? When was this? Did you get an age on that? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I believe, if I remember correctly, this house was on Long Island, and when I looked at it, I think it was about 15. No, yeah, maybe about 15 years on the reside that they had done. Clearly there was a lot of issues here, and a lot of mistakes made. But I thought these were good pictures to take, because it's really I think it's worst case scenario, but this is what can happen. Same here. So they, they butted up to this vertical piece of trim. They left, no space there at all, no caulk, no touch up of the ends of or edge coating on the ends of the board. And here's the result of that.
So that could be you could have a 1/4 inch space and can caulk it if it's it's primed, and that's okay.
Yeah. So on color, on pre-finished product, here, if you're butting up to a vertical piece of trim, whether it be a corner or the window, the right way to do that is to leave roughly an 1/8 inch space there, and then caulk. That space allows the caulk to, get in between the board and the trim and fill in that area. So even on pre-finished product, when you meet a vertical piece of trim, you should leave an 1/8 inch space and caulk with, the color match caulk. That's the color of the siding. Does that answer that question for you?
Yeah, thanks. And you can butt up against other product, wood, you can butt it up to anything, right? Or leave that 1/8 inch. It doesn't have to be Hardie. That vertical, that looks like wood.
Oh, yeah. Of course, it can be wood, it can be PVC, and so we have been having some issues over the years now with PVC. Like I said, I don't know about Connecticut as much, but in New Jersey, I would say 90% of all James Hardie installs are paired with PVC. And as you guys probably already know, PVC moves a lot. And so, it's real important to leave that 1/8 space when you're going against PVC and laying some caulk in there, because, I think we all know that piece of trim is going to move. It's going to expand and contract in cold and warm temperatures. So that is one advantage, that Hardie trim does have over PVC is, it's a dimensionally stable product against another dimensionally stable product. So on this house, they also weaved the lap siding. So they didn't use a corner board. They just weaved the siding, which we don't allow. And here, like we had mentioned before, no, it doesn't seem to be a gutter here, but there's no, nothing left here, no space, no nothing, probably just all, water runs down here all the time. Who knows if it's getting into that window, but clearly after years of abuse, the paint started to come off, and and this is why we require all these things for warranty purposes. Let's see. That's all I got on that slideshow. Did you have any questions coming in?
Let's see. Someone's typing right now. Gary wants to know, what's the warranty on the product?
So the warranty is a 30-year non-prorated warranty. So same warranty in year 1 as it is in 29 and a half. We also carry a second warranty, an additional warranty just on the finish of the product. So we warranty our Color Plus finish for 15 years, and the substrate itself for 30.
Let me ask the question for the inexperienced home inspector. When he shows up to a house, how is he able to recognize that it's a James Hardie product?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I think, we don't, clearly I can tell right away because I work with it every day. I think, there's not a lot of competitive fiber cement in our markets. There is some, and I think LP is, while it's not fiber cement, it's considered, obviously it's a hardboard siding. Um, it's hard for me to explain how you would see the difference, but there's a clear difference between like an LP and a James Hardie. But I guess really there's no writing on anything. You wouldn't really be able to like read on a stamp or something unless you saw the back of the board, which you're not going to see. But I would say if you're going to a house and it's hardboard siding, there's a high likelihood that it's probably James Hardie. It could be Nichiha, which is a competitive fiber cement. I've never seen Nichiha on a job. I've also never seen LP on a job in New Jersey. I've seen some up by you guys in Connecticut, but I think most of the time, the builder, if it's a new construction house or something like that, would know. But yeah, I mean, it's a good question. There really isn't like, there's not like a stamp on something specifically that you could read.
But Pete, the installation probably is pretty much, I mean, pretty similar to you guys, right? As far as their product. I mean, it might be.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the only real competitive hardboard in the Northeast would be an LP, which isn't fiber cement. It's whatever they call that, OSB, right? Or that's what it is. Really, it's OSB with a coating of paint on it. They may have some different install requirements, but basically they're the same. I don't think that they are as drastic as we are at some of those clearance sizes. So where you have to keep James Hardie, say 2 inches up off the roof, you may not have to do that with LP, right? For instance, like Boral, I know you don't have to do that. So Boral would be another one. They make a really good trim product, and their trim product, same thing. It's a hardboard, type fiber product, but you can basically put that to grade or in the dirt, for instance, and they don't have any issues. So there may be some slight differences in install, but like I said, we don't really see that much competitive fiber cement residentially. I think you would see more of it commercially, panelized products. You know, so I think that's another thing that maybe I could just talk about real quick. We do make a panel product, right? 4x8, 4x10 panels, and that's what you would technically see on a board and batten job, right? You have the panels that go up, you got the battens, the decorative battens that cover the seams and the nails and so forth. But there's also, another way to install the panels. It's, more of a commercial look where you're using extruded metal channels in between the panels and at the horizontals, as opposed to using battens, which is a pretty commercial look, but I'm starting to see a lot more of it now residentially. It's a more modern look. I mean, typically it's been on some of these, insane, very expensive multi-million dollar homes. But you may see that out there somewhere, where it's all extruded aluminum, outside corners, inside corners, and very industrial, or commercial looking. But I have seen a lot of that start.
How does the product hold up on fire resistance?
It doesn't burn. at all.
Nice.
It will not burn. So you could toss a piece of Hardie in the campfire and it'll just stay there forever. I mean, it'll get charred, but like it won't burn. It doesn't there's no promoting of like any kind of flame spread or anything, but I mean technically there's no fire rating. But it just won't burn.
Are you finding that application in California with the fires that they have? And
Yeah. You know, we've seen it in situations like that. You know, we started a lot of James Hardie 35 years ago, 40 years ago when they came to the US, started out there out west. And yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of it, you know, because of things like Hurricane Sandy, right? Where, you know, all the vinyl siding on the entire Jersey Shore just blew away in one day, right?
right.
And now James Hardie owns the entire Jersey Shore. You know, with the exception of, you know, some of these insane homes that are, you know, using stone or, you know, something like that. But um also with the Build It Back program, you know, out on Staten Island and Breezy Point, some of these areas that were really affected by Sandy, they were given a choice whether they wanted to put vinyl siding back on their houses or James Hardie. They had those two choices. So we own a lot of those areas now too, because, you know, clearly those people chose, you know, they chose the James Hardie. But, you know, wind purposes, you know, rain, weather on the shore, the salt water, fire, insect resistant, you know, woodpeckers don't touch it. There's all those things that you know, that I think make James Hardie you know, a sought after product.
How about how does it do with mildew, like
Yeah,
north facing?
it can get mold on it. It can get mildew on it. For sure.
It's
You
the
know,
paint, probably, right? It's the paint that the mold mildew is probably growing on, right? It's not actually the cement board itself, right?
yeah, it's just growing on the outside of it, just like it would on, you know, the one side of the slate roof that I have. You know, one side gets moss, the other side doesn't. But again, you know, with all these soft wash companies and all this stuff that's out there now, you know, you're not supposed to power wash Hardie. You can, but I think, you know, they tell you not to, because I think most people will just take the nozzle and go, you know, 4 inches from the siding, and then you got a problem. But with these soft wash companies and stuff now, you know, they spray that stuff on, they rinse it off, and within a month or so, all that stuff dies. And I mean, it's pretty amazing. So that's what I tell people, you know, that ask about that. But yeah, it will grow. It will have like mildew on it and stuff, just like anything else would.
Peak, other than the clapboard and the shingles, what are some of the other exterior products? Do you have scallop? I mean, is there what other exterior products do you guys offer?
Sure. So currently in the Northeast, you know, we have lap siding, we have shingle. We do not make individual shingle. We only make panelized shingle. We used to make individual. We do not anymore. So the only shingle we make is in those panels, like we talked about before. Um, and then
Why,
we make
why is that? Is it was there too much lifting, breaking,
uh,
or
I probably just a manufacturing thing, to be honest, because what the individuals were, they were just they were cut up from the panels. So we took the panels that we made on a machine, put them into another machine. I just think, you know, shingle, individual shingles just probably weren't, you know, beneficial for the company to make. Although I'll tell you, it was great because we use them as an addition to the panels to fill in, right? To build a corner and then go forward with your panels to, you know, to get into a gable. not trying to hold a 4-foot wide panel, trying to move it around up there. But anyway, we don't make them anymore. So, board and batten, right? So batten strips, with the boards. We do make soffit, vented and non-vented. Again,
Scallop,
what's
scallop,
that?
those scallop panels. You make those too?
We do not make those anymore in this market. But what we do have in this market, we have a line that we call a spire, okay, which is it's a flat to wall product, so there's no lap, and it forms different grooves. So for instance, a shiplap or nickel gap, a V groove, and a square channel. And I'm sure you guys have probably seen a lot of that. If you're seeing that in a new product, it's either Hardie or Boral. Boral makes a lot of that. They do a good job with that. So James Hardie makes that now too, and that's becoming very popular in this area. It's a real cool product. It's real easy to hang. I mean, it literally just stacks on top of itself, and whatever you chose, where they stack, it forms that joint, and it's a pretty big exposure, so it goes up quick. The only difference in that particular product is we do not sell it in color. It's only sold in primed. And the reason for that is that siding is twice the thickness of our standard lap siding. So our standard lap siding is 5/16. This other product is, roughly around 5/8, a little thinner. But you have the ability to miter the corners on a house with this product. So a lot of people that are using it are mitering the corners. And when you miter if you can only imagine trying to use a pre-finished piece of material and trying to get a miter right up an entire side of a house, it's, it doesn't really work. So they use primed. They're able to caulk in the gaps, put finished nails, tighten up their miters, get all that stuff, good to go, and then paint it afterwards. But you should start seeing a lot more of that in the market, especially in Connecticut. We've been selling a lot of it in Connecticut. It's not cheap, and you have to paint it. So you right off the bat, you're looking at an additional cost just to paint the entire house. That's our newest product that we launched in the Northeast. We do have another panel product that's called a Hardie textured panel. So it's a 5/16 panel, just like the board and batten panels would be, except it has texture to it. So there's kind of a coarse texture that looks like a certain type of stucco. And then there's like a fine sand texture that looks like a really fine, applied stucco.
What we're seeing here on the Tudor style houses that had the wood panels that rotted, they're putting your product in, on those Tudor style condos and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that your panels that I'm seeing? They're like 4 by, and
that wouldn't be the new panel that I'm talking about now, but we do make a panel that's called the stucco panel.
okay.
It's not this new product that I'm talking about. It's been around for a long time. That is probably definitely what you're seeing. It looks just like an old Tudor style.
That's your product. That's your product.
Yeah. So we do make that as well. That is also now only available in primed. So there's a lot of different products and a lot of different areas where they're sold. So as I was talking about the textured panel, it's a really cool product. People loved it. We did some test selling here in the Northeast, and it was received very well. But the company decided not to sell it in the Northeast. So, we do sell it in other parts of the country, but we don't sell it in the Northeast as of yet. You may see some of it up because we've done, 30 or so test sales, but other than that, I mean, like I said, we do make soffit, but 90% of the installations with James Hardie are vinyl soffit. It's still going to be vinyl soffit. It's really hard to get away from vinyl soffit. I mean, it's so good. It's so easy to put up, and there's definitely a lot more work when it comes to putting up Hardie soffit, but we do make it, and it is available.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for the information tonight.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
And if we have some of our members that need to get in touch with you, is it okay that we post that information for them, or they can certainly contact?
100%.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions in the field. They may want to get back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely give me a call first. I always say, and I don't know how you guys all work, but the quicker you get to me before the homeowner let's have that conversation first. It gets difficult sometimes because there's a lot of people running around out there who, clearly you guys see it every day, who don't really know exactly what they're doing. And at the end of the day, it's just not fair to the homeowner.
Correct. You're absolutely.
And I mean, that's really what we're all here for. It's, that's the customer. So.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to conclude the webinar tonight. And for our home inspectors, just check out our calendar of events to see what's coming up. And I can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you very much.
I'll talk to you,
guys.
Thank you.